All right, so yeah, I wanted to invite today to discuss the V1 graduation of the instance types API. I brought this up in a web meeting, I think 2 weeks ago, and yeah, there was some discussion around the new features I imagined for this new version 1 API. Um, so it is in here in this summary, it's the custom sizing. And it's a bit of a controversial feature, let's say. So with an instance type, usually it is required to provide a CPU, an amount of CPUs and an amount of memories. And you cannot specify any other values in a VM's definition. So if you would try to create a VM which has, let's say, a certain amount of cores in its spec, and you would also try to use an instance type, there would be a collision on creation, and the validation emitter would reject that VM. Yeah, and this web is exploring if we should lift that restriction to basically allow having instance types that might provide CPU, but you don't have to use it. That's the first thing. Or the second thing would be have an instance type which does not provide any CPU or memory at all, and it would only provide other things like, let's say, a GPU device or other devices or a certain scheduler, things like that. But it would not restrict on a given amount of CPU or memory. I want to say this feature is controversial because in certain cases, it kind of makes an instance type pointless. So we have U1 instance types, which are universal, and the only feature that they provide is CPU and memory. And if you're going to use an U1 instance type and you provide your own CPU and memory in that VM's definition, then it becomes kind of pointless. So I would say that's a controversial part about it. But yeah, are there any other opinions about this? Yeah, no other opinions. That's good. I mean, last time I brought this up, it was viewed rather controversial. So there were some people that had opinions about it, but apparently not right now.
Um, Actually, I'm sorry for being late. I,
Ah,
yeah.
like
What is the? Sorry, maybe you can repeat just quickly. Maybe I have an opinion, but if not,
yeah, okay,
uh,
okay. So yeah, the short version of it is this graduation would also bring in a new feature, which is custom sizing that would allow you to override the amount of CPU or memory that an instance type provides you with.
yeah, and I really wonder why can't we keep it external or not do it with this graduation?
Yeah, actually, it wouldn't be directly in the V1 jump, so it would be another intermediate API version if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, so graduation is not dependent on this, right?
I mean, sort of. Right now we have V1 Beta 1. If we decide to add another feature, then we should add V1 Beta 2. If we decide to not add this feature, then we might go to V1 immediately.
But why this feature cannot be feature gated and the same way have the same cycle as we have for um, VMI V1?
Feature gating. I mean, yeah, we could put it behind a feature gate. I'm not sure if that makes things easier.
I think the problem
Um,
here is that you're changing the API, right? So you're making these fields optional. I think they're required at the moment, right,
true,
Felix?
true. Yeah, that's another change. Yeah, they're required right now.
So yeah, if this wasn't messing with the API definitions, then yeah, you could technically put it behind a feature gate. The API kind of versioning wouldn't matter. But yeah, in this specific case for this specific feature, it is kind of coupled to the API definition because you need to make it optional really to make this usable. I'm not a huge fan of it. That's why it didn't get completed while I was kind of responsible for instance types. I do wonder like who is actually asking for this. If we've had actual users or downstream customers even like come forward and ask for this, or if it's purely a kind of wish list item from some groups, from PMs or something. Like, do we have any concrete like folks asking for this?
I don't know of any. I know that it's on certain PM's wish list though.
So there's some people that there's actual people. I won't say complain. Maybe complain is a bit of a strong word, but are saying that unless you do custom sizing, the number of instance types that you deploy, for example, becomes much larger. While if you have sizing, you can use the same one, but only change a small field.
I think it becomes interesting if you don't want to provide CPU or memory with an instance type, but still want to provide, let's say, a GPU or other devices or other things you can provide with an instance type like scheduler. If you wanted to provide any of those, but you don't want to provide a CPU, that's impossible right now. I see Eddie has his hand raised.
I think that from the last time I don't remember, it's like too much time passes between the discussions. So last time I think one of the question that was raised was this one is either competing or complementing. It's not clear between the templates, right? With the templates, and when you want to graduate, then it means that this is very, very clear, like from at the product level. Sorry, it's a bit noisy.
Yeah. I see that the big difference with a template or instance type is I would say it's if it's cluster agnostic or not. So an instance type, it can be cluster agnostic. So it would provide you with CPU or memory that's not really tied to a certain specific cluster. But with a template, you could add your resources that are very cluster specific, like a certain network or volumes. So a template does not consist only of the virtual machines definition, but it can only also carry data like disks of a VM. So that's the difference with instance types and templates still.
So what can't you do with for the obvious question would be what can't you do with templates that you can do with instance type, for example?
With an instance type, you still get the, let's say, abstraction of your resource sizing. So you don't have to specify it in every, or let's put it other ways. If you create a VM from a template, you get a full and fat definition of a VM. It's if you look at that YAML, it's possibly hundreds of lines. Let's say you have a fleet of VMs, you want all of them to use the same configuration. That's sort of the idea that the instance types had initially, that you would only specify certain settings once. And if you change them, then you can update all your VMs to use those updated settings. And with a template, it's a bit different. You get that fat VM. You don't have a reference to the original settings anymore, and how would you update all of those VMs? And I think actually both of them sort of complement each other, because you can still use an instance type or preference even from a template. So I wouldn't say that they're going against each other.
Okay, and okay, thank you for the clarification. And the second part was, and this is like something that bothers me a little bit. The template was, I mean, if we created a new spec for the VMI, for example, right? We added some fields there. The templates will implicitly get it, right? Or if you have a feature gate on a specific new field, the templates will implicitly have it. You don't need to do any more work about it. However, with this instance type, when you add a new field, then if you want that to be included in the instance type, do you need to go and add it to the instance type itself as well? Like it's a duplication. So is it correct what I'm saying, or it's not like that? Because this means that instance type will always require, it's like the maintainability of instance type is very, very hard compared to something else. And it's like you will always need to edit, and you also need to decide if you want to edit or not. And there are things that you don't support there, like networks and volumes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. If you add a new field, new configurable on a VM, you would need to add that to the instance type or even the preference as well. Yeah, that's true.
So the specific with custom sizing is just one instance. It will happen a lot probably in the future.
I wouldn't say necessarily that custom sizing is really related to that. It's more about making existing fields on the instance type optional. But yeah, Floodic.
I was just curious. Do we know what? How does it work with other hyperscalers, or do they allow editing instance types?
For myself, I don't know, but I would assume that they don't allow it. If you created that, I think that's already a difference we have. I think if you created a VM on other hyperscalers, it's just set in stone. You use that instance type that one time you created that VM, it stays for this like forever. In our case, we're a bit more flexible about it, so we can choose to update the size of an existing VM.
And I think this is the rabbit hole that we are falling into. That we are from a well-defined feature falling into something that is now I'm losing the I'm losing this well-defined scope of the instance type. So I know what's an instance type. That this is that. I got it. I paid for that. If I don't want to use it, then let me just use the template. I'll write whatever I needed in there, and that's it. Like why do I need another dimension? Yeah, so I have a bit of difficulty here, but I wonder how can we proceed. So, for example, how can we decouple this? What if we will create? Uh, what if we will make these fields optional, but they will have to come right now um, with the with the validation policy, and this is how we graduate. Like we put the fields optional, and the validation policy will not allow changing them, and then we'll see how um, if we add this ability later or not.
What means, or what would the validation policy actually validate?
Prevent from anybody not specifying all the fields.
So what I could imagine is that we could make those fields optional in the instance types, but we would still conflict. If you have an instance type that sets a certain amount of CPU, you could still not set it in a VM. But if you have an instance type which does not specify CPU, then you would be free or would be allowed to set your own size on the VM. I would say that's a middle ground.
But that's essentially implementing the feature, right? I think Vladik's talking about moving graduation forward and then potentially addressing this later. Like, we could. doing that as we jump to V1 doesn't seem right, though. Like I'd rather, I don't know, if we can push back on this, push back on it, and suggest that we're not going to do it, and just go to V1, or at least just focus on graduating to V1 in this cycle and attempting that. Because yeah, as Eddie said, there are other kind of concerns with everything. Like I don't want us to be fighting two battles on two fronts, if you will, and get nothing done. I'd rather focus on one of them. And to me, the graduation thing is the achievable thing. The custom sizing thing is just a wish list item from product management that doesn't fit the original vision of instance types. And as Vladik said, it kind of just muddies everything, to be honest. That's my opinion, at least at the moment.
If you look at today's API, I would say it's even a bit muddy today. So we have certain fields in an instance type which are optional. You do not have to set them as well. Like apart from memory and CPU, everything is optional. You don't have to put it into an instance type. You can provide your own in a VM. So I would say it is acceptable to make CPU and memory optional as well. That at least would allow you to have instance types which do not specify it, and would allow you to specify other things if you want to, if you have the need to. But there would still be this separation where if you have an instance type that mandates something, you cannot override it. So it would not be the custom sizing use case, but at least it will lift that restriction, and maybe it would even streamline the API, I would say, if you will.
Vladik, yeah, I was just thinking, but Vladik, what you mentioned, did you mean like put a validation field in the instance type and then either make the validation field or the CPU and memory field? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you create, if the fields are optional, but when you create this instance type, you're not able to create it without CPU or things like this. That was my
the instance type or the VM, because I was thinking that you meant like add a validation field to the instance type, so an instance type can also have validation fields inside. And then when a VM uses the instance type, it either needs a validation field for CPU and memory, or it needs CPU and memory field. But maybe I was wrong.
No, from my point of view, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to achieve is to still be able to proceed with the graduation, but not to handle the custom sizing. And the only way for me to do, like in my head, to do it is to make these fields optional, but prevent in a validation that this is still required. It's like sitting on two chairs. But I agree with Lee that if we can push back on this, it's maybe it's even better. But on the other hand, what Felix says also makes sense. I feel that this right now loses value. The value of instance type was for me the such a well definition of yes, I want that size. That size from billing perspective makes sense. But if I have to right now go ahead and choose and make modifications on my VM, that I can just do it on the VM. Like, why do I need an instance type? Or I have a template. Then why do I need an instance type?
Because it's not just sizes. An instance type can have different fields like machine types or interfaces.
I know, but I don't need. I mean, the original idea of instance types was is not to fixate some kind of a default. That wasn't the purpose of this. It was to create something that, okay, for this type of VMs, use this instance type. That's what you're paying, and this is like the default configuration that you will get with this. And if I'm not doing this, then I can just have different VMs. I'll define the VM and I'll just use it. And now we have templates. And template is exactly defining what you are talking about. All of these fields and all of this stuff. Then why do I need an instance type?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to pick that, we could have a template which has the devices, for example, the GPU, as I mentioned earlier, and we could still take the CPU and memory from the instance type. So that would make sense as well. In that sense, I agree. That would make it easier to graduate this. Just push back on this change and go with the V1. That's true.
Let's push back. I mean, everything else in the instance type API kindly makes sense to me. It just this is very. When I heard about this, was really controversial.
So let's suppose we push back on this. Would you then agree on a V1 and the 1.9 cycle, moving all of this to V1?
I don't have any real objections, but I don't have a criteria that says okay, we are like we're okay. What I don't know. Maybe you guys have.
We wouldn't even have to. I mean, it wouldn't change the features, and it's available already. So I don't think there wouldn't even be a big benefit to move to V1. It's just a different name now.
Yeah, but to Eddie's point from before, well, actually not this call, it was the previous call, I think. I think he asked about the justification for not having like networks and disks in the instance type API, and had we had any user feedback? I think that was from Ed in the previous call. Like this all started well before we had the VEP process in place. So I think it would be beneficial if we just go ahead with graduation to potentially draft out some of those points and kind of explain or at least set out the current state of affairs and the fact that, you know, we don't think we need to add any additional fields to instance types, for example. Like networks and volumes will be, you know, they're covered by templates, and the whole interaction with your templating work as well, actually documenting that as part of the graduation kind of enhancement might be useful as well, just to set the current scene as we go to V1. And in terms of user feedback and stuff like that, I've not collected or collated anything over the years. So yeah, we could potentially try and do that at a community level at least, and figure out, you know, what the actual usage of instance types is, and try and, you know, provide that as evidence for graduation as well. That might be useful.
I agree, but I don't know who will. Should we make this a criteria for graduation, or is it just like a you know, who is using this in terms of that data collection?
Well, it could just be, yeah. I don't think we need to make it too formal. I think like this is the first time I think that an API has gone to V1 since we've had the enhancement process. So yeah, just as a test, we could, you know, post to the mailing list, bring it up on the community meeting, things like that. We've only got, see, the VEP deadline is that for things to be merged in a week. Like, that's going to be tricky, but we could potentially draft it out and merge an initial draft and then follow up later in the cycle with some more evidence or something if folks are happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. This is a bit tricky because I mean, in the VEP process, we just agree on the fact that this is the work that we are going to do in this cycle, and then by the end of the cycle, we are judging whether was this work completed or not, and then we could still reject the VEP and remove it from from tracking at the end of the development cycle, right? So I would say that we're not limited in time. Actually, we could say that So the next 2 weeks is just to agree on the VEP. It's just agree on the wording of what is going to happen in the cycle, and
Okay.
still by the end of the cycle we could make other decisions.
Okay, well, yeah, that affords us some time then during the cycle
Yeah.
for graduation to kind of do that kind of stuff. If you're okay potentially doing that, Felix.
Yeah, I could do, yeah. Okay.
Does that shorten the migration cycle as well a little bit? Does it go down to 3 releases?
It should be 3, yeah, true. Yeah, if we don't need an intermediate version, we could do with 3, which still sounds painful for not gaining anything apart from a different name, but yeah, that would be 3 cycles then.
Okay, cool. I have a conflict at past, sorry, so I'm gonna have to drop in a second. I think a few others do as well. Are you okay with the direction now, or do you want any additional calls or discussions about it?
I am okay with this direction, yeah. I don't have a super hard opinion on custom sizing. I'm not the biggest fan of it either, I have to admit. So if we can do with the current feature set, I'm more than happy to do so.
Cool.
Right. There's any more questions? If not, then yeah, that's it. People have to drop.
Yeah, thank you so much. And
Thank you, Felix.
reading this, yeah.
Bye bye.
I guess.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Bye bye.